So, spasibo большое, Anton. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here with you in beautiful Cortina, part of Vino VIP, in this amazing, magical place of Cortina, where the next, actually, Winter Olympics will be in 2026. We've been having an incredible event here of some of the most important winemakers and wine producers in Italy, and also some of the iconic winemakers came from America as part of my film, and also Italians like Giovanni Geddes, the CEO of Ornellaia and the Frescobaldi Group, was on my panel, including Alessia Antonori, who was part of the group of the Antonori family, representing the Antonori family, because Ludovico Antonori was the founder of Ornellaia, who did this with my great uncle André Tchelistcheff, which is the reason I'm here, because I made a film about André. Now, I'm a filmmaker, and was a filmmaker before I made this film on André. And in 2006, someone came to me and said, Mark, you know, they're doing the Vintners Hall of Fame. It's like the Baseball Hall of Fame in America, about winemakers. And André is one of the most important winemakers in American wine history, and in a way, world wine history. And he said, well, you should make a film on him. And I said, well, André didn't want a film made on him. And he said, but then I started looking more into it, and I said, so okay, I'll go and I'll film this thing and see what happens. So I filmed at the Vintners Hall of Fame. I borrowed, got this camera, which George Lucas, actually with Sony, created for the beautiful Star Wars films, and filmed this whole event, and not 1 minute of that footage is in my film. That was March 9th, 2007. The film premiered in Berlinale, the Berlin International Film Festival, in February, I think it was 15th, 2017. So that's 10 years. So it took me 10 years of my life and effort to make this film, on and off in the beginning. And then in order to do the film, I would do a commercial, make some money, and then pay for the helicopters. Every piece of footage of my film was done with the highest quality I could find, and including trying to get back to Russia, where André was born. And I didn't do it because he was a relative of mine or a great uncle of mine. I did it because I thought it was an epic story and an inspirational story, and a story which I felt needed to be told. Good for the world right now, in a world which is chaotic, both, I think, because of the advent of technology, 15-minute sound bites, 10-second sound bites. People are having less and less time for actually what is quality, what is the quality of life, and finding their own passions. And I think this is what one of the lessons, whether you're a winemaker, a shoemaker, a lawyer, a businessman, a politician, do it with your heart, do it with passion, and do it with honor. And I think this is one of the things that André brings to life in this film, is this idea of there's still something about being honorable. There's still something about doing things with all your heart and doing it right, and that being a gentleman matters. Right. And whether, or a gentleman or a lady, no matter what you do in your life. And this is, I think, some of the things, when people watch this film, it doesn't matter what background they come from, they get this from it. They get inspired from it. And I didn't make the film to promote my family. I didn't make the film because he was my great uncle. I made the film because it was a story that needed to be told. Filmmakers tell stories, and I'm a storyteller. And great stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a great wine. A great wine also should have a beginning and a middle and an end. And these are the things which, if you read a great book, it's the same way. It has a great beginning and a middle and an end. And I'm hoping that people will find this with my film. And it took a lot of effort. It took years of research, because André, although, let's say, was probably one of the most famous winemakers in America, he wasn't, let's say, a famous actor or a rock star that had a lot of footage on him. So it took me almost some of the footage I only got 5 years later. Then when I went to Russia, because I wanted, André, having been born in Moscow, really wanted to bring in the Russian soul in this film, because until the day he died, and he never went back to Russia after he left, And you know, he left at the age of 19 in 1920, when of course, the White Russian Army lost in the Civil War, and he fled to Constantinople at the time. And he always, though, kept his Russian soul. He would have his blini parties. He would, you know, this was something inside of him. And this is why I wanted to bring in and spend time in Russia and walk the streets where he walked, go to our old estate, which was burned down, also bring in Russian composers. And that's when I found Alexei Agi, who I think is one of Russia's modern or contemporary best music composers, especially in not only just for his own music, but for the film world. And I wanted this minimalism for my film. And so unfortunately I tortured poor Agi, because he would send me music and I'd say, no, we got to do this, we have to do this. And we really worked on it to really fit the music to the film. And that's what it is about, finding that perfection. And it wasn't easy. I mean, and I had great supporters in Russia. I have, you know, 2 Russian executive producers, you know, André and Eugene Shemilev. They really helped me while I was in Russia, and of course then the kindness of others, including the Russian winemakers. There were only 3 people in my film that didn't know André personally. One is André in Crimea, Makagonov, who was the winemaker at Saint-Anil, Chateau Saint-Anil in Crimea, and the other one is Pavel Shvets. And then the third one, of course, is the vintner and film director and producer, Nikita Mikhalkov, who was very kind and helped me and talked about André on my film. These are the only 3 people that actually personally did not know André, but I felt it was important to bring in a bit of the Russian aspect because of André's deep connection to Russia and our, you know, over 500-year history of the Tchelistcheff family being in Russia. André wasn't filmed that much, and in my film is 98 minutes. I have 350 hours of material, including material which is film, what I shot, and archival material. I spent a lot of time in archives, and material of André that I found. He was interviewed at different periods of his life, and I was able to find that material and then incorporate it. Plus, I found his original 8mm films, because he was making his own films in the 1940s and 50s with an old 8mm camera. And actually, I digitized that all in Moscow. There is a place in Moscow that has one of the best digital transfer machines for film. They have a machine from the Netherlands, which is one of the best machines, so you can really do high resolution from each frame, and that's where you bring it up to that level of, and of course all of that costs money. And then all the material that in America I found I had to transfer as well with American studios. So it took a long time to find each piece of André's life. And one of the most important things to me was that André would tell his own story. That although we have in English, on the English version, Ralph Fiennes narrating, who is he was the one I wanted from the beginning. He's a Russophile. He recently did this film on Nureyev, The White Crow, but he loves Russia. And when he first saw a rough cut of my film, he said, "It's such a beautiful thing what you're doing. It's filled with passion. I'll do it for you." So it was an incredible honor to have Ralph Fiennes, and I met him through Walter Murch. For those in the film world, Walter Murch he's the one who came up with the idea of sound designer. Walter did the sound design and editing for Apocalypse Now. He did the Godfather movies, The English Patient, where he worked with Ralph Fiennes. He also directed many of his, a couple of his own beautiful films, and he is my mentor. So it took I have some of the top experts in film who helped me make this film. It wasn't just a video. Had I known it was going to basically take 10 years of my life and continues to, it was an incredible journey, but maybe I wouldn't have done it, because it was more difficult being a Tchelistcheff making a film about my great uncle than if I had been somebody else. And maybe it would have been, but in that way I also wanted it to be the best I could, because but that's the way I am. I'm a perfectionist. I want everything that I do, and maybe this is also partly how André became such an important person in his world, in the wine world, and was so respected around the world, is because he believed in the minute details. And everything, when you write a book or you make a film, it's in the details. It's in the wine is made in the vineyard. Filming is also then made in the vineyard in a way. Filming and winemaking are very similar processes. First you start with wine, you start with your rootstocks and your plants, and you have to grow them, you have to find the terroir. With the film, your terroir are the people, whether it's a feature film or a documentary, that terroir are the characters. And you have to film them, you have to talk to them, and then you find that's all your material, that's your terroir. And that's your base, that's what makes it. But then you have to craft it, you have to use imagination, you have to find what the story is. And like I said, 350 hours to 98-minute film, you have to weave a story. And so far, thankfully, the critics have been very kind to me, and they've loved the film, and it is a story. Of course, 60–70% of the winemakers are not in my film, and I apologize to them, but you can't put everything into the film, and there are many stories that are not part of the film. But a film is very different from a book. When I'm doing a book on André, and when that book comes out, it'll be more encyclopedic and more of the particular stories, and some of the stories that could not be in the film will be in the book. Well, I hope to see all of you and the Russian audiences. I love Russia. Russia is, even though we left Russia, my family, during the Civil War, and it's still part of in our souls. I mean, both my parents, my mother is of Russian heritage of the Goncharova side, so. Which is connected also to Pushkin. Natalia Goncharova, my ancestral relative, married Pushkin. So that's my mother's side, and my father's side, Tchelistcheff. And so we continue to keep our Russian traditions. And it's very interesting because for me, when I even go back to Russia to see my relatives, we keep more traditions than the ones who were living under communism for 70 years. And our Easter traditions and our Christmas traditions and all of this are very important. And I continue that with my two children, Vera and Natasha, and I have a Russian wife, so I have even more connection to Russia. And I feel I remember the first time I went to Russia in '91, in a way it was like coming home because of all the stories and all the years of hearing Russian and at home. And it was a great, there's something always pulling you, this Russian soul still pulling me, and so to the Russian audiences, thank you very much. Spasibo Bolshoy. I hope you have a chance to come see my film, and looking forward to that. And thank you very much for taking the time. And wishing you all much luck, much success, and follow your passions. That's the most important thing. No matter what it is you do in life, do it with honor, do it with passion. That's the most important things. Thank you.